So here's the first story from the Daily Mail. Coup fears as Wagner army marches on Moscow to target evil military chiefs. Kremlin accuses a leader of mercenaries of inciting civil war, puts its troops on capital streets and vows to smash armed mutiny as state TV runs emergency bulletin. This is crazy. They say there are fears of a coup in Russia as military vehicles were seen in the streets after the chief of the is it Wagner Group or is it Wagner Group?
Wagner sounds cooler.
I think that's actually the appropriate pronunciation. They called for an armed rebellion and direct challenge to the Kremlin. Yevgeny Prigozhin said his force had crossed into Russia as he called for the ousting of Russia's defense minister and vowed to punish military leaders whom he accused of killing 2,000 of his fighters. The Wagner chief said, "We had crossed state borders. We'll destroy anything that gets in the way. We go all the way." We got this photo. It's here. Photo here. Armored vehicles were allegedly on the streets of Moscow. So the first thing I got to say is, what was that saying? Believe half of what you, what is it? Believe half of what you see and none of what you read or hear or whatever. I don't know, something like that. Take it all with a grain of salt. I don't know for sure. But I will say this. When I first heard this story, I was like, what, did NATO offer him double? Like, this is how it goes with PMCs. Yeah. He's fighting in Ukraine. They're getting demolished. And then he's like, it's not worth the money. He's a private military contractor. What does he care? And then NATO says, what are they paying you, dude? And he was like, 50 million. He's like, okay, we'll give you 200. And he was like, okay, sure. That's all it takes, right?
Money printing machine goes burr.
This is the danger of hiring mercenaries to fight a war. It happened to the Rome. I don't know if this is exactly what happened with the Romans, but they were bringing in mercenaries from all over the world to come and fight for the Romans because the Roman citizens, it got to a point where they didn't want to fight anymore. And then that's the beginning of the end because those people do not have any allegiance to your country.
This is the American Revolution. They brought in, the British brought in German mercenaries.
The Hessians.
Yeah.
Hessians, is that it?
Yeah.
And those are the people who got routed by when George Washington, I almost said Joe Biden, my God. When George Washington crossed the Delaware, it was the Hessians who got routed.
Christmas Eve?
Yeah, the famous painting, right? The most famous painting of the Revolutionary War. That's who he was going to fight. The Germans, actually.
Yeah, I mean, there is obviously value to having a more robust fighting force, including mercenaries. But if you're relying on mercenaries, you're in a very precarious position.
This is what I never understood. You see a movie where it's like someone hires a hitman. I'm like, and they always say like, "What are they paying you? I'll pay you double." It's just like, why would not the assassin be like, well, okay, sure.
Are they going to turn me in if I don't do this? I don't think they're going to do that.
You have a reputation to protect as a hitman, though. But this is something that we see. There's a great book called The Modern Mercenary, and there's a phenomenon that they call Neo-medievalism, because one of the problems during the Middle Ages was that people had an allegiance to their lord, their god, and their king. So whenever there was like a conflict broke out that was between any of them, you had to pick your own, you had to pick which master you would serve. So mercenaries have different interests, different loyalties, and all that. So obviously, we might be saying, if this is true, that neo-medieval order, like establishing itself once again in our modern society. So they obviously aren't loyal to Russia.
No.
He says, quote, "There are 25,000 of us, and we are going to figure out why chaos is happening in the country." Promising to tackle any checkpoints. He said, I asked that no one offer resistance. Is 25,000 really enough to do anything? I mean, if they're centralized just in Moscow, yes, like they could take some building or something. But I just want to point out that we're no longer in the era of being able to take over a country by occupying a building. And it's kind of crazy to think that was the case at some point. Like, a bunch of dudes would run into a building and they're like, we're in charge now. And everyone would be like, well, crap, they're in charge now.
Yeah, worked in Pinochet did that, I think, with what was Salvador Allende in Chile. That was in the 70s, I think.
It's like
they just went in. But once you get the leader, that's what he wants, is he wants the defense minister. If this is real, he doesn't care about the building.
Yeah,
but if you can get the people, if you get Putin, then you get Putin at gunpoint to tell the people, I concede, I step down. You get the leader to do what you want them to do, I think.
Well, power is influence, right? So symbols of power do matter. So occupying Moscow, even though strategically you're right, like they could move to another city. The Russian government has access to nuclear warheads. You would think this doesn't matter, but symbolically occupying Moscow is a huge deal. And if people believe that this mercenary group is more powerful than the defense minister, guess what? It's more powerful than the defense minister.
Has anybody ever occupied Moscow?
Since the beginning, since the Kiev, the old Kievan princes,
Yeah, Kiev was the original capital, I think.
right? Every empire died trying, but like,
Well, that was
has
the
anyone
Wagner
ever
group.
Right? Like,
This is it. The U.S. finally figured something out. They were like, hold on. We can't invade. Let's pay someone else to do it. There you go.
Oh, the French occupied Moscow.
We didn't just
apparently.
figure that out. I think America's been doing that for a long
Moscow
time.
has been occupied 6 times in its history by foreign armies.
Wow.
The Polish in 1610. Do you want me to tell
When
all
was,
of
when
those?
was France?
France. When was France? French occupation 1812. Napoleon made it to Moscow. I didn't realize
Wow.
I thought
That dude was crazy. Napoleon.
that. The summit of the French.
But then what
invasion.
did he tried going further?
he lost his army on the way.
They only
to Moscow.
occupied it for 36 days. The city was devastated by fire. This is all from Wikipedia. And I'm just kind of.
Oh yeah, it wasn't like they destroyed everything. The Russians, Napoleon wouldn't have any supplies, and then he got screwed over in the winter and was like, "We're dying."
Scorched earth policy. As you retreat, you burn everything so that the enemy doesn't have anything.
Is that
to get.
scorched earth? I thought was when you destroy everything so that they cannot raise a defense. Like you destroy farmland and kill civilians.
You could be right.
Because Sherman's March to the Sea, I think, was the first modern example of scorched earth. Whereas he marched south, he just started destroying farms and killing civilians and just wiping them all out.
You could be right.
The Romans did it to Carthage when
But
they took
there
the
is
city.
there is a tactic where as you're being occupied, you destroy everything. Didn't they do that with Richmond? The South, they sacked Richmond to prevent the Union from being able to utilize it or something like that. I don't know.
That is common. It's a very common. And when you're desperate, to burn your defenses as you retreat, so that the enemy's not able to occupy.
I mean, they're doing that in Ukraine. Who do you think blew up that giant dam, the Nova Dam? It wasn't the Russians.
Well, this is the funny thing, like Nord Stream, for instance. They're like, Russia blew up its own pipeline. And you're like,
Nah, bro,
why-
nah. Like, nah. No, Ukraine blew up the dam.
this is not definitive, though. This is like, you've got warring propaganda.
So the New York Times did a report on how Ukraine has sort of poison pills all throughout the country to blow up their own infrastructure. And the Washington Post said that they did a test strike on the dam earlier in the year. They did an operation to test. So you can just connect the dots there.
Yeah, and I think the blowing of the dam flooded or has potential to flood Crimea, the Crimean Peninsula.
That's right.
Cut
It
off.
really hurts the Russians to blow up the dam.
And it's always
very bad thing.
who benefits from this. So the pipeline that was destroyed is the one that allows them to transport oil and gas without going through Ukraine. So obviously that gives them the ability to cut off the Ukrainians from energy. So that would be a prime target for the Ukrainians to destroy, or their allies being the United States or whoever. Like, it wouldn't make sense for Russia to cut off their own strategy.
This is it's a good
And
conversation.
they're winning too, aren't they?
It's all propaganda. It's tough to tell.
But here's what I noticed. They've been saying, Western forces, Western media's been saying Russia's been losing the whole time. And then I keep looking at these maps of territory and Russia's expanding its control over the Donbass. And I'm like, I'm confused. Like, now they're saying that this region where the dam is controlled by Russia. And I'm like, wow, Russia controls how much? I thought they were losing. I thought they were getting pushed back. I thought there was this big offensive that pushed back into Russia. But Russia controls all this land? I was like, it doesn't sound like they're losing. I mean, I'm not here to say they're winning or anything, but it doesn't sound like they're losing.
Dude,
I don't know, though. I don't know. There's a lot of propaganda.
This will be, if this truly is that the Russians accidentally shelled 2,000 of their own mercenaries and now the mercenaries turn on them, that will be remembered for tens of thousands of years if we have history for that, if we can maintain it. It'll be remembered as one of the largest military blunders ever in the history of humankind.
I just don't believe it.
Yeah, it's a
For that reason.
convenient piece of propaganda.
Exactly. And it's much simpler that a multi-billionaire went to the Wagner group and said, we will give you $100 billion to your company. You will be the preeminent in the Eastern Hemisphere military contractor for all of our work forever. You will want for nothing. Side with us. It's a simple question. You go to the guy and you say, do you think Russia's going to win? And he's going to be like, is it really worth how much money he's paying you? Well, this is what we do. It's like, we'll pay you 10 times as much and you'll win. And he goes, deal. That simple.
We did just have a $6.2 billion accounting error.
Maybe that's where it went.
That's where it went.
That's where it went.
No joke. Maybe.
Yeah.
Whoops. And now the guy's got $6 billion.
I
And he's
hate it when
probably
that
like,
happens.
dude, he makes a video claiming whatever he wants. How much money they have to give him to make it happen? Probably not a lot. He's a private military contractor. He runs a business. If he works with Russia and Russia ends up succeeding or pushing in this fight, his only customer is going to be Russia. He's looking right now. They're probably telling him, listen, Once this whole thing dies down, you've got potential conflict in the country A, country B, country C, country D. You've got China, Taiwan. You've got, the entire continent of Africa and South America. We can hire you for all of these things. But if you operate with Russia, that's the only customer you will ever have.
Yes.
And what are you going to buy? After, they may have even gone to him and said, after we flatten Russia, where will you live? Will you, with all of the great money they paid you, will you buy a building in Siberia perhaps? Or how about this? We give you $1 billion. You turn on Russia and you can buy property anywhere in the world. Heck, we'll give you an island. Not a hard deal. And that's the danger of using mercenaries.
There's an island called Little St. James that is recently unoccupied, and it has a special temple on it that's nearly brand new, lightly used. Special blue and white temple. Those are your colors, right, Wagner? Blue and white? You'll love this place. It's got a real Eastern European flair to it. Whew. Yeah, this is the I think you might. Obviously, I think you might be right here. I'm furiously searching for the map, the wartime map, because actually Russia's gained an enormous amount of territory of Ukraine's, and this Ukrainian offensive that they've been talking about has done nothing. It's actually been an absolute total failure. You don't hear about it because we're propagandized as much as anyone else in the world, but the Ukrainian spring offensive has been very, very bad, and as you can see where all the money is gone. It's now in flaming tanks and personnel carriers all throughout the eastern front of Ukraine. And the most effective group, if you go through on the YouTube and some of the YouTube channels, and you're able to do the Google Translate thing, and you're able to listen to these Ukrainian generals talk, the people they're actually scared about is the Wagner group. That's the people they talk about. They say the Russian army is ineffective. It's this Wagner group. These guys are actual operators. They are sophisticated, they're smart, and they also have a wartime experience. So they're not rattled at all, because Russia's putting a lot of young guys on the front lines. And so if you go through and you watch some of these YouTube, the Kiev post is the one that I watch, right? Because they have these insight in these interviews with these Ukrainian generals, and they talk about how worried they are about the Wagner group and how skilled of an operation that is. And so this is clearly something that is, if you were to take them off the board, off the chessboard, well, hot damn. I mean, this would be a big thing, obviously, for Ukraine.
I always thought about mercenaries and what a hard life that is, because the people that hire you to fight want you to die in the battle that they win. They want you to win the battle but die, so they don't have to pay you. Yeah. So it's like Russia doesn't care about these people. Like the Russians, they want to win and they would rather not pay them, to be honest. Obviously, they would like loyalty over non-loyalty, but mercenaries know that. And if you kill their men, man, they are not going to wait.
We don't do very well with taking care of the people who fight our wars either, though. So it's not like that's. I mean, I see what you're saying, but in general, I don't really think that in most cases, many of the people that come back from war are really taken care of in any way, shape, or form. So,
but veterans make up 11% of all the homeless population in America. Veterans make up 11%.
Large portion of the suicides.
Our veterans,
We do use mercenaries in part because the soldier death number is what always gets reported, because the American people care about soldiers dying overseas. And when it's personnel, even though they're former soldiers that served our country that went into these mercenary groups, it's not as scary of a number. So there is some more concern in the United States for at least the death toll, especially overseas.
And we started upping our use of private military after we started withdrawing troops at a certain point, right? Back in 2013 or something like that.
In Afghanistan?
Yeah.
So just to clarify, because people are pointing out scorched earth, two super chats saying that it's when people are when a defending army destroys everything. Another person responded, it's actually both, but most famously associated with offending armies destroying anything of use to the place they're occupying. But there are several circumstances in which people in their own countries destroyed everything as they were fleeing. But scorched earth, the specific examples when you pull up, Sherman's March to the Seas, the most notable modern example. Yeah. And that was when he was destroy the farms, destroy the railroads, anything they can use. The purpose was to destroy their will to fight. Yeah. So just to completely demoralize.
I thought about the
Third Reich did this in Russia. When they were on the edge of Moscow as far as the Third Reich got in Russia, and they were as close as any modern army's been to conquering Moscow, and man, they burned they burned everything on their way back.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.